What if the story everyone thought had ended was only waiting for the perfect moment to begin again? That is the question sending waves across the entertainment world as news breaks that Wang and Shen Yue are set to reunite in what is now being called one of the most anticipated returns in recent drama history, the in 2026. Because this is not just another project announcement. This is a revival, a moment charged with history, emotion, and the kind of anticipation that only comes when two names carry a story far beyond the screen. For years, their connection has lived quietly in the hearts of fans. A memory of chemistry that felt too natural to be scripted. A dynamic that seemed to blur the lines between performance and something more real. And then silence. Separate paths. Different roles. New stories that unfolded independently.
Until now.
The announcement arrived without warning, but the impact was immediate. Within moments, social platforms were flooded with reactions. Not just excitement, but disbelief. Because for many, this was something they had hoped for but never truly expected. A reunion that felt almost impossible. Yet here it was. Confirmed.
Real.
And already rewriting expectations. The project itself, the in 2026, is described as a character-driven drama set within a secluded, emotionally charged environment. A place where strangers arrive with hidden stories and leave changed in ways they never anticipated. But from the moment the casting was revealed, the narrative shifted. Because no matter what the story on paper might be, the real focus became something else entirely. Wang and Shen Yue. Together again. What makes this reunion so powerful is not just their individual popularity, but the history they share. A history that cannot be replicated, no matter how carefully a script is written. Their previous collaboration created something rare. An authenticity that resonated deeply. A connection that felt effortless, unforced, and most importantly, believable. That kind of chemistry does not disappear. It lingers. It evolves. And now, years later, it returns in a new form. More mature, more layered, carrying with it everything they have experienced since they last stood in the same frame. Behind the scenes, early reports suggest that their reunion was not treated as a simple casting decision. It was intentional, carefully considered, because those involved understood the weight of what they were bringing back. From the first table read, there was reportedly a shift in the room. A recognition. Not just between the actors, but among everyone present. That something familiar had returned. But it was not exactly the same. It was deeper. There was a calmness to their interaction. A confidence that comes not from trying to recreate the past, but from understanding it. They did not need to rebuild their dynamic. They simply stepped back into it, and allowed it to grow from there. For fans, this is where the emotional impact truly begins. Because this reunion is not just about seeing them together again. It is about witnessing how they have changed, how time has shaped them, how their connection, once defined by youthful energy, now carries a different kind of depth. In 2026, their characters are said to navigate a relationship filled with quiet tension, unspoken history, and moments of vulnerability that unfold gradually. A narrative that mirrors, in many ways, the real-life journey of their partnership as performers. There are no rushed confessions, no exaggerated conflicts. Instead, the story leans into subtlety, into pauses, into the spaces between words. And it is within those spaces that their chemistry is expected to shine the most. Because that has always been their strength, not just what they say, but what they do not. As production moves forward, small details continue to emerge. Scenes that require emotional restraint rather than dramatic expression. Moments where a single glance carries more meaning than an entire conversation. Situations where silence becomes the most powerful form of communication. These are the elements that define a mature story. And they are perfectly aligned with where Wang and Shen Yue are now as actors. No longer defined by the roles that first brought them together, but enriched by everything they have done since. For the audience, this creates a unique experience, a sense of continuity, of witnessing not just a story, but a journey, one that began years ago and is now continuing in a way that feels both nostalgic and entirely new. The anticipation surrounding the in 2026 is not built on hype alone. It is built on memory, on emotion, on the quiet understanding that some connections, once formed, never truly fade. They simply wait for the right moment,
For the right story.
for the right reason to return. And now, that moment has arrived. What lies ahead is uncertain. The story will unfold in its own time. The characters will reveal themselves gradually. But one thing is already clear. This reunion is not just about revisiting the past. It is about redefining it, taking what once was and allowing it to evolve into something new, something deeper, something that reflects not just who they were, but who they have become. And as the cameras begin to roll, as the story begins to take shape, as the world prepares to watch once again, a quiet realization begins to settle. Some stories do not end. They pause. They wait. And when they return, they carry with them everything that made them unforgettable in the first place. Only this time, they are ready to become something even more. And yet, as the excitement settles into anticipation, a deeper truth begins to emerge. Because reunions like this are not simply about returning to what once was. They are about facing what has changed. For Wang and Shen Yue, stepping back into the same project is not a continuation of the past. It is a confrontation with it. A quiet acknowledgement of everything that has happened in the years between then and now. Time, after all, does not leave people untouched. It reshapes them, refines them, adds layers that cannot be undone. And as production for the in 2026 moves forward, those layers are beginning to reveal themselves in ways that no script could fully predict. Those close to the set describe an atmosphere that feels different from typical productions. Not heavier, but more aware. There is a sense that every scene carries more weight than what is written on the page. Because behind every line of dialogue, there is history, not just between the characters, but between the actors themselves. Moments that were once defined by youthful spontaneity have now been replaced by something more controlled, more intentional. And yet, within that control, there is a depth that was not there before. A kind of emotional precision, where every pause feels deliberate, every glance feels meaningful, every silence feels complete. One of the most talked about elements during early filming has been their ability to communicate without words. Scenes that, on paper, appear simple have reportedly become some of the most powerful. A quiet exchange across a room. A shared moment of stillness. A hesitation before speaking. These are not dramatic gestures, but they are the kinds of moments that stay with an audience. Because they feel real. Because they reflect something that cannot be easily performed. Understanding. There is also a noticeable shift in how they approach their roles individually. Wang, once known for his bold, expressive performances, now carries a certain restraint. A calm intensity that allows emotion to build gradually rather than erupt instantly. It is a transformation that reflects growth, not just as an actor, but as someone who understands the value of subtlety. Shen Yue, on the other hand, brings a quiet strength to her presence. A grounded confidence that anchors every scene she enters. Where her earlier performances carried a lightness, there is now a depth, a sense of awareness that gives her character a stronger emotional core. Together, these changes create something new, not a repetition of what once worked, but an evolution of it, a dynamic that feels familiar, yet undeniably different. And perhaps that is what makes this reunion so compelling. It does not try to recreate the past. It builds on it. Fans watching from a distance have already begun to sense this shift. Even in early glimpses and behind-the-scenes moments, there is a tone that feels more mature, more reflective, less about immediate impact, and more about lasting impression. And within that tone lies something powerful, the understanding that what made them special before was not just chemistry. It was authenticity. And authenticity, when given time to grow, becomes something even more meaningful. As the narrative of the in 2026 continues to take shape, there is an increasing sense that this project may redefine how their partnership is remembered.
Not as a single moment in time,
But as a journey, A story that did not end with one chapter, but continued quietly until it was ready to be told again. Behind the cameras, there are also moments that mirror this evolution. Conversations that feel easier, silences that feel more comfortable, a shared understanding that does not need to be explained. These are the kinds of details that never make it into official reports, but they're the ones that shape what eventually appears on screen. Because what the audience sees is not just acting. It is the result of everything that exists beneath it.
Trust,
Familiarity, respect, and perhaps even a quiet recognition of what they have been to each other throughout their journey. As the release of the in 2026 approaches, expectations continue to rise. But interestingly, the conversation is beginning to shift. Less about whether it will succeed, and more about how it will feel. Because success can be measured in numbers. But impact is measured in something else entirely. Emotion, connection, the ability to stay with someone long after the story has ended. And if early impressions are anything to go by, this reunion is not aiming for immediate applause. It is aiming for something deeper, something that lingers, something that reminds audiences why they cared in the first place. In the end, what makes this moment truly remarkable is not the fact that Wang and Shen Yue are working together again. It is what that reunion represents. A return, not to who they were, but to what they have become. And in that return, there is a quiet promise that some connections, no matter how much time passes, are never truly lost. They simply wait until the moment they can be seen again.
clearly, completely.
And perhaps for the very first time, exactly as they were always meant to be.